Alright, so this will be the first part of my Yoshimitsu guide, in which I'll be covering his best moves, important stances, some tech, and a few combos to get you started. I hope this guide helps you out. If it does, leave a like, and be sure to check out 1+4's channel, as he was a ton of help in helping me learn Yoshimitsu and understanding the character. I'll leave his links in the description, so be sure to check in if you're looking for more information or have any questions. As always, there will be timestamps in the description in case you want to jump to a specific part of the guide, and with that out of the way, let's begin with an overview of Yoshimitsu. Yoshimitsu is a character whose unique playstyle and vast array of tools allow him to thrive in Tekken 8's aggressive format. While many other characters excel through immense offensive pressure, Yoshimitsu prefers to use his variety of tools to punish his opponent's mistakes and use their aggressive momentum against them. Defensively, Yoshimitsu is extremely evasive and boasts arguably the best keep-out in the game, all while maintaining his punishment-oriented offense. However, Yoshimitsu's playstyle does have holes like his high-risk lows, lacking frames, and vast selection of options, making it difficult to know which is the right tool for a situation. But if you put in the time to master his difficult learning curve, you'll eventually have access to one of the strongest characters Tekken has to offer. Soul Stealer, or as it's more commonly referred to, Flash, is a definitive Yoshimitsu technique. In Sword Stance, Flash is a 6-frame move that will allow Yoshimitsu to follow up with a guaranteed back 2-2 heat engager on hit. In No Sword Stance, Flash becomes a bit slower at 8 frames, but will now launch for a full combo on normal hit. It also gains a larger hitbox, allowing it to hit standing opponents and be used more aggressively as opposed to its more parry-like function in Sword Stance. Flash has a ton of uses, but in my experience, the most consistent use of Flash is as an aggressive follow-up to moves like 2-2 and Dragonfly forward 1+2 when your opponent is looking to punish, effectively giving you some pseudo plus frames. However, on block or whiff, Flash is -15, so if you overestimate its range, you're probably going to die. Now that we've covered Flash, let's get into Yoshimitsu's best moves. Let's start with Yoshimitsu's down forward series of moves, starting with down forward 1. Down forward 1 is a fast mid that is safe on block and allows Yoshimitsu to reposition with a movement option afterwards. On hit, it leaves Yoshimitsu with a +5 frame advantage, allowing Yoshimitsu to safely go into down forward 1's follow-ups, like down forward 1-4, a double mid, down forward 1-2, a mid-high, and down forward 1-2-1, which will launch the opponent if the second hit connects. From there, let's take a look at Yoshimitsu's standard launcher in down forward 2. Down forward 2 comes out fast and is safe on block, making it a great way to launch an opponent who doesn't respect your frame advantage. On top of this, down forward 2 is also difficult to punish on whiff, but keep in mind that down forward 2 will not launch crouching opponents on normal hit, so avoid using it as a mix-up tool. Down forward 3 is a deceptively powerful mid. Down forward 3 is painfully slow at 17 frames, however, it's safe on block and leaves Yoshimitsu in a full crouch state, giving him access to some simply ridiculous options, which we'll go over a bit more in the stances section. Let's take a look at down forward 4. Down forward 4 is a safe mid-poke with incredible range and an impressive amount of pushback both on hit and on block. The range and pushback of this move make it a great tool for helping Yoshimitsu keep his opponents at his preferred range, allowing him to make the most of his sword stance moveset. Down forward 4's only drawback, however, is that it's extremely linear and can be sidestepped, leading to a pretty solid punish from your opponent. Yoshimitsu's 2-jab is an incredibly versatile tool, simply due to the amount of extensions it has. The one I feel is most useful, however, is 2-2. 2-2 is an 11-frame punisher that will allow Yoshimitsu to enter either his no sword state by default, or his Kincho stance by pressing 1+2. As I mentioned earlier, 2-2 is also a great move for forcing opponents to respect your pseudo plus frames, as you can follow it up with an aggressive flash. Yoshimitsu's Crouch Dash 1 is a high-risk, high-reward mid-launcher that has a ton of range, making it a pseudo-safe option when used optimally in sword stance. However, Crouch Dash 1 is minus 17 on block, so chances are you will die if your opponent sees it coming. From there, let's talk about Crouch Dash 2. CD2 is Yoshimitsu's go-to high crush, coming out at 14 frames and benefiting immensely from Yoshimitsu's sword state. CD2 is not only Yoshimitsu's go-to high crush, but also one of his best whiff punishers, as it will launch for a full combo on counter hit. On block, CD2 is punishable, but CD2's range can make punishing difficult if used optimally. Down 2 is another incredibly versatile tool that gives Yoshimitsu access to safe pressure, hit confirms, and insane counter hit options. At 16 frames to start, Down 2 is not the fastest move, but the range and extensions give it viability in a variety of situations. For example, let's take a look at Down 2-1. Down 2-1 is a mid-high natural combo string that is safe on block and has a large delay window, making it effectively a hit confirmable pressure option with considerably high damage. Down 2-2 is the unsafe, hit-confirmable double mid alternative in which the second hit becomes a counter hit launcher if it hits by itself. It's worth noting that every version of Down 2 and its extensions are extremely delayable, effectively making them hit-confirmable counter hit options. Down 2-2-2 is an extension that ends in a quick, unsafe mid-launcher. As such, this move works best after you've conditioned your opponent into expecting Down 2-2 before catching them off guard with the launcher from the additional hit. Back 2-2 is a quick, hit-confirmable heat engager that is also an extremely dangerous whiff punisher if Yoshimitsu evades a move with back 3 or back 4. Additionally, back 2-2 can also be used as a poke tool for damage or even after a sword stance flash on hit. Yoshimitsu's 3-1 is a mid-high heat engager that grants a unique Dragonfly situation on block. In this situation, Yoshimitsu will have enough plus frames to allow Dragonfly forward 1+2 and Dragonfly 2 to beat mash options. Yoshimitsu has a lot of unblockables that do a lot of pretty ridiculous things, and while they're not all entirely viable, there are a few that are key parts of Yoshimitsu's game plan. Let's start with full crouch down forward 1. Full crouch down forward 1 is a low unblockable that will allow for a full combo on hit. However, full crouch down forward 1 itself is extremely slow, and despite the animation, has surprisingly low range. But there is an interesting interaction with down forward 3. If you hold back and press 1 after down forward 3, you can do full crouch down forward 1 instantly, and since down forward 3 moves Yoshimitsu closer to his opponent, this also remedies the range issue. Bad Stomach is one of my favorite moves on Yoshimitsu. It's an evasive, ranged, high unblockable that allows Yoshimitsu to follow up with a full combo on hit. The only downsides of this move are that you do have to go into the Bad Stomach stance to use it, As a high move, it can be ducked, and if used at point blank, it's very easy to be counter hit. There honestly isn't much to say about up back 1+3. It's a very slow unblockable that turns into a really powerful Oki tool if at the wall. And finally, it wouldn't be a Yoshimitsu guide if I didn't talk about down 1+4. Yoshimitsu stabs himself, doing heavy damage to both himself and the opponent on hit, but keep in mind that this damage can kill you. However, it is a Yoshimitsu player signature to end the round with a Harakiri. Let's go over Yoshimitsu's best punish options. At 10 frames, Yoshimitsu can punish with 1-1. At 11 frames, Yoshimitsu can use 2-2, which will leave him in no sword stance. At 13 frames, Yoshimitsu can use down forward 1-4. At 14 frames, Yoshimitsu can use back 2-2 or back 2-2 1+2 to cancel in the Kincho stance. At 15 frames, Yoshimitsu can use down forward 2 for a full combo on standing opponents. And up forward 3, which will high crush and lead to a full combo on hit. From crouch at 11 frames, Yoshimitsu can use while standing 4. From crouch at 14 frames, Yoshimitsu can use while standing 1-2. And finally, while crouching at 15 frames, Yoshimitsu can use while standing 2-1 for a full combo on hit. Yoshimitsu's Mutou No Kiwami, or as it's more commonly referred to, No Sword Stance, completely alters his move list, removing some moves, adding others, and completely changing the properties of his existing moves, providing huge buffs or major restrictions. Yoshimitsu can enter No Sword Stance with back 1+2, 2-2, and at the end of some attacks by pressing back, such as down 2-2 and while standing 4. Personally, I like to enter No Sword Stance at close range by doing his down back 3-3 series into a while standing 4 back. To start, let's take a look at the moves Yoshimitsu loses access to in No Sword Stance. In No Sword Stance, Yoshimitsu loses access to both his entire Dragonfly and Fleece Stance movesets, both being replaced by his self-healing Indian Stance, and his back 1+2 from Kincho is totally removed. Finally, Yoshimitsu's down back 1-2 string is removed and replaced with a generic low jab, and a ton of other moves like crouch dash 1 and Kincho back 2-1 suffer pretty severe range penalties as Yoshimitsu no longer has access to the extra range from his sword. However, these drawbacks afford Yoshimitsu access to one of the strongest stances in Tekken, as No Sword Stance offers an incredible damage buff and lifesteal to any move that uses Curse Blade Yoshimitsu, including his No Sword Stance Flash. No Sword Stance also applies new properties to these moves beyond a bit of extra damage and lifesteal. His one jab becomes what is in my opinion the hands down best 10 frame punisher in the game, as it becomes a safe 10 frame wall splat that will also launch on counter hit. At 8 frames, Flash becomes the fastest full combo convertible launcher in the game, and gains effective range on top of the No Sword Stance buffs. No Sword Stance up back 1+2 changes Cleansing Sword Yoshimitsu from a modest keep out tool to a stage dividing slash that's safe on block with wall splat properties. And finally, in No Sword Stance, Kincho 2-1+2 becomes a guard break to help deal with defensive opponents. Entering No Sword Stance also gives Yoshimitsu access to a few new moves, with the most notable being the full combo convertible Hell Sweep from full crouch down forward 3. And last but not least, Yoshimitsu's 2-1 is replaced with a double high natural combo string with wall splat properties. Manji Dragonfly is a powerful stance, but it's pretty easy to grasp. This works both in favor of Yoshimitsu and against him, as generally most players are familiar with the main threats from Manji Dragonfly. Yoshimitsu can enter Manji Dragonfly with up 1+2, 3-1, after while running 3 by holding up, while standing 2-1, and 3-4. However, 3-4 on block is the worst way to enter Dragonfly, as you can be floated out of it during the stance transition. Now that we've covered how to access Manji Dragonfly, let's take a look at the stance's main threats. Dragonfly 1 on its own is a slow, counter-hit launching mid. However, in Heat, this move is significantly buffed, becoming plus on block and launching on normal hit. Dragonfly 4 is a faster mid-Heat engager with wall splat properties. Dragonfly forward 1+2 is the main high threat from Dragonfly. It's a homing wall splat that has a ton of pushback and is plus on block when in Heat. After a 3-1 or while running 3 on block, this move is guaranteed if your opponent tries to mash. Dragonfly 3+4 is an unbreakable high throw. Dragonfly forward 2 is a high that will launch your opponent on counter hit. Outside of that, however, Dragonfly 2 is a great way to space your opponent, as it has an impressive amount of knockback on hit. If Yoshimitsu is in Heat, or no sword stance, this move will launch if your opponent tries to jab. And finally, Dragonfly 2-4 is a high mid unsafe launching string. However, if you do just the 2 jab, you can use it as a spacing tool while staying in Dragonfly. Unlike Dragonfly, which is pretty straightforward, Kincho is a stance that has quite a bit of nuance and situational applications. While I won't go over all of Kincho's uses and applications, I will cover those that I feel are the most realistic for those learning Yoshimitsu. Before we get into the main threats from Kincho, there are a few things I want to cover. The first is that Kincho has a built-in parry window that lasts for 6 frames on activation. While it doesn't offer much in terms of follow-up, it's definitely worth knowing as it can get you out of some pretty bad situations. The second is that Kincho has a built-in movement option if you press forward or back during the animation, allowing it to be used as both pressure and an evasive mix-up. With that out of the way, let's take a look at the main threats from Kincho. Let's start with Kincho 3. Kincho 3 is a very slow low that will allow Yoshimitsu to follow up with a guaranteed up-back 1+2 on hit. However, Kincho 3 is very slow, and if your opponent is able to react to it, you're probably going to die. Kincho 4 is one of the few options Yoshimitsu has that's plus on block. At 16 frames, it's not the fastest move, but it does have full tracking. In fact, Kincho 4 and Sidestep 4 are the same move, and can both transition back into Kincho, allowing them to loop into one another and effectively trap your opponent in a plus frame loop. Kincho 1+2 is a quick mid attack that has multiple hits and leaves you in back turn. While being in back turn isn't great for Yoshimitsu, he does get a guaranteed back turn down 1 on hit. Kincho down 1 is another slow low. However, unlike Kincho 3, Kincho down 1 is a bit safer, as its range can make it difficult for most characters to punish on block. Kincho forward 2 may be the best move out of Kincho. This high heat engager is very fast, very safe, very ranged, and not only wall splats, but gives absolutely insane frame advantage when blocked at the wall. Without heat or no sword stance, Kincho 2 1+2 really isn't that great. With these buffs, however, Kincho 2 1+2 not only becomes a guard break, but also gains a ton of viability as an Oki tool, which I'll cover more in depth in a later video. Kincho forward 1 is a move that heavily benefits from no sword stance. No sword stance makes this move a safe wall splatting mid that does a ton of ship damage and heals on hit. Outside of that, however, it's a pretty good way to end a wall combo and doesn't have a ton of viability outside of that. Yoshimitsu has an incredibly powerful heat state. While in Heat, all Cursed Blade Yoshimitsu attacks now receive their no sword stance enhancements by default, and certain moves like Dragonfly 1, Dragonfly forward 2, and Dragonfly forward 1+2 become much faster. Yoshimitsu can enter Heat with 2+3, 3-1, Forward 1+2. Back 2-2. Kincho forward 2. And Manji Dragonfly 4. And that's pretty much everything I know on Yoshimitsu so far. Thank you so much for watching. If the guide helped you out, please feel free to subscribe, and as always, I'll update the guide again when I learn more.